Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So this is going to be my final video on this particular subject. I've been ranting and raving about Nvidia pretty much since the GeForce 10 series launched, and honestly, it's not their fault. With your guys' help in the comments section, just talking with you guys and a couple other outside factors, which I'll cover in this video, I've really come to the root cause of what really irked me about this particular launch. See, I have never had a problem with Nvidia. I really am brand agnostic. I don't really care who's in the lead. In all honesty, if there was a 50-50 market share, that would be perfect, as that would definitely be the best for everyone. However, it certainly seems like I'm pretty biased for AMD lately because I've been railing so hard against Nvidia. Now, it's not really their fault, and I'll go into that here in a little bit. The big issue is the massive amount of misinformation out there from a lot of tech tubers, review sites, and of course, users. And this generally just causes a bad community where information that people need, especially if they're looking to purchase new video cards and upgrade their systems, they're not getting it. So that's part of the reason why we started this channel, was to go ahead, take information objectively, put it out there, and then give you our opinions on this. Now, Joe and I can do videos independently. Lately, this has kind of been the subject that I've been focusing on, and Joe's been focusing on his family. Now, I want to get back to the videos where Joe and I are discussing just random topics and kind of move on from here. But it's nice to know that I've kind of come to the conclusion as to what's really going on, and I wanted to go ahead and share that with you guys, as I think some of you guys have the same frustrations as I do. Okay, so let's begin. In the last video, I showed this particular slide right here. What really stands out is the fact that AMD clearly had the technological advantage over Nvidia pretty much throughout. Now granted, AMD didn't always take advantage of this, and they would build smaller GPUs to compete against Nvidia's much larger GPUs, which generally led to Nvidia taking the overall lead. But in all honesty, this chart kind of doesn't matter to me, and that's particularly what this video is about. What is irking me specifically? Now, the market I'm interested in is the $299 to $399 market. I've always been the, second from the top tier GPU buyer. Now, this isn't a money problem. I personally make enough money that if I wanted to, every Friday I could go buy a GTX 1080 Ti and still pay all my bills every single week. Now, clearly that is not economical, and personally for me, it's more of a principle thing. I don't need to invest that much money, or I should not need to invest that much money into a hobby of mine that I do enjoy, but at the same time, it's just not that critical to me. Personally, I don't really care about resolution. I just care about smooth gameplay, and I like decent looking graphics, but at a reasonable price. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's always been a market for users like me that want high-end graphics, maybe a couple frills cut down, but at a reasonable price point. And that's always been the $299 to $399 price point. So today, I'm just going to bring up two GPUs, the GTX 970 and the GTX 1070. As you guys know, I already own a GTX 970, and there's a reason for that. It launched at a good price of $330-ish. I ended up getting mine for $300 after a rebate, and then I got a free $60 game that I actually wanted. I think I got Witcher 3 for free. So, cool. That was an excellent value. Now, granted, I didn't get it at launch, so, there are a couple extra discounts there, but at the same time, that was a fantastic value for anybody who bought one. Now, the GTX 1070 launched at $449. And that's a real issue here, guys. And that's what really kind of bugged me. But it's not, like I said, it's not really Nvidia's fault. Nvidia understood that there was going to be a market for these video cards, and that, hey, worst case scenario, if we have to, we can lower the price. They launched it at $449, but they had the backup plan of $379 as the MSRP. Now, if the GPUs were not selling well at $449, they could have easily just scaled back to $379 and completely saved face. Now, if you look at the specs here, we were talking about die size in the last video. The GTX 1070 is actually 21% smaller than the GTX 970. So this is a pretty significant die shrink. That means it's much smaller, and they're charging a lot more money for it. Now, I know a lot of people out there are throwing out things like inflation. Now, if we adjust for inflation, as you can see on the inflation calculator, 329 in 2014 only equates out to being $333 in 2016. Let's go ahead and ramp that up to 2017. Now, even if we go ahead and jump to 2017, that is still only $342. Well, now I know there's going to be that person out there going, hey, what about R&D costs? They're flying off the hill. They're all over the place. Man, that R&D cost. Well, I went ahead and actually looked it up instead of just throwing out arbitrary claims. I went ahead and chose several quarters before Maxwell launched because in April 2013, the R&D budget actually spiked up pretty considerably. So that seemed to be when Maxwell started to be in development, or at least that's what I'm assuming. So I picked where it peaked up. So I'm trying to go with like the highest number here. And I did basically the same thing before Pascal came out. And we're using the same time period. Now, granted, the GTX 10 series came out in June, and the Maxwell cards came out in September. But to try to keep this apples to apples as close as I possibly can, honestly, the numbers don't change very much regardless. Now, in this period leading up to Maxwell, they spent $1,336 million. Now, in the same time period leading up to Pascal, $1,332 million. Now, for all you people out there screaming adjusting for inflation, technically, even though that number is lower, if you adjust for inflation, that's even lower than that. Now, let's go ahead and check out the Nvidia graph itself. Now, if we look at the Nvidia research and development expenses quarterly, we can clearly see here that right around here is when Maxwell launched. This is where Pascal kind of started ramping up, and then expenses went down pretty considerably. Why is that? Well, it's because Pascal is basically just Maxwell. It doesn't need that much R&D. I mean, all they had to do was refine the architecture, shrink it, and poof, there you go. Now, if you see where we're at now, okay, so Pascal launched right about here, okay? Now, R&D did start ramping up just a little bit before Pascal launched, but now if we see where we're going with Volta, see, this is a new architecture. You can see that the expenses are skyrocketing. Yes, expenses are going up. They are getting more expensive. So yes, R&D costs are going up. They're getting more expensive, but Pascal was not a completely new architecture. It didn't cost Nvidia a lot of money. In fact, it cost less than Maxwell did. And they were able to deliver a GTX 970 for $330, sold a crap ton of them, made a crap ton of money off of it. If you check out the 2014, 2015 earnings reports, Nvidia made plenty of money there. But they didn't make, what they made off of Pascal at $440, which is smaller, or $449, smaller chip, a lot more money. So they made a shit ton of money in the year 2016. Now, this is what businesses do. I 100% agree. They're out to make profit. Good for them. They tested the waters. This is where the real issue comes in. We bought it. You, me, the consumer base. We bought this as a whole, as a community. We bought the crap out of GTX 10 series cards. I just proved to you that it's not inflation. It's not R&D cost. If anything, it's much lower if you account for inflation, because R&D costs went down, then inflation is even lower. The only reason why these cards cost as much as they did is because Nvidia wanted to see if they could get the money out of it, and they did. Now, you guys are probably wondering, well, Chris, who cares? It's $450. If somebody wants to go pay that, fine. You can go find another card for $200, $300, whatever. Now, no, I can't, because that's where that card was supposed to be, in between $300 and $400. And that wasn't possible even as late as November, because remember, I did have a GTX 1070. I spent $489 on an Asus Strix GTX 1070 for this channel. Now, in November, I sold it off, used, secondhand, on eBay for $429. That means even in November, those cards were selling for well over $400. So clearly, this was not something that was just a little bit inflated. But we bought it, guys. And I know, like I just said, well, why does it matter if somebody wants to spend all that money on a card? I didn't really want to spend it, but like I said, I was trying to make a point on CPUs there, early on about i5, so I needed a more powerful graphics card. Well, the reason why it bothers me is because it's jacking my prices up. It does affect me personally. When people are willing to spend this much extra money, we're talking about an extra $120 for the same class GPU from just the previous generation. It's cheaper to make for Nvidia. Yes, it was faster. It was a good card. But to me, it was definitely not worth $450. That's why I sold the thing once I got my value out of it for this particular channel. I even remember telling Joe, even a couple months before that, I was thinking about selling it because it just wasn't enough value for me personally. So we're destroying our own categories here. Now, for example, the GTX 1060, they originally wanted to launch that at $299 with a Founders Edition. We all know that. That got scrubbed. And the reason for that is AMD actually had competition at that particular price point, and they couldn't get away with it there. So they had to be competitive from the get-go. But if you look at the GTX 960, and this goes for AMD too, their prices are also going up as well in this particular category. If you looked at the R9 380 and 380X, those were only $199, and I'm pretty sure it was $229 on the 380X. Same thing with the GTX 960. They were around $199. Now we're looking at, $249, $239, $279. The 9 gigahertz GTX 1060s, which doesn't really do anything if you read any of the reviews. It wasn't memory starved, maybe on a high overclock. Regardless, those are going as high as about $300. So that particular price category also has jumped up $50 to $100. And we're just talking about one generation ago. See, people like to harp on Intel for being money grubbing. But if you look at the Sandy Bridge i7 2600K, that launched at $300. And then Ivy Bridge was like $320. And then Haswell was like $330. And sure, it's climbed up over time where the 7700K launched at $350. So did the 6700K. But that's a couple of bucks each year. That I could at least account for inflation and other things like that. And I could buy that if it was a few dollars more. For example, if the GTX 1070 came out at $350 instead of $330, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I wouldn't be making these videos. And honestly, I do want to apologize to Nvidia as a company. It's not really your fault. You've done your job for your shareholders and for your company and your employees. It's the users, it's you guys and me. I mean, I bought one too. I had a reason for it and I jumped ship as soon as I could, but that doesn't excuse me. We cannot allow this to happen. Now, if you want to go ahead and just keep pouring money out there and throwing it away, that's fine. I have clearly proven at this particular point there's no reason for this card to cost what it did, but yet people don't care. Now, TechSpot finally did their review of the RX 580. It took them a little while, and the reason why it did is they did a full 27-game suite test. It's fantastic. This is by far the best RX 580 review, that I have seen. Now, the conclusions and everything that Steve came to are pretty standard fare. It's pretty much what Guru 3D and Tech PowerUp, they also kind of agreed with Steve in the same fashion here. But I wanted to go ahead, I'm going to post this one comment that was in the comment section, and this really exemplifies what the issue is out there. I read the review. You've done your very best to make out that the 580 is faster. Your suite of games couldn't have been more biased. Every single other respectable tech reviewer states that the 1060 is faster by 7% on average, according to AnonTech, for example. I'm not coming here anymore. The 1060 is a better buy than the aging power-hungry 580, as every other respectable site has concluded. People should not listen to you. Now, I don't condone cyberbullying, and I don't want anybody just going out of their way to go ahead and hunt these people down. I did not post their username for that reason. But this isn't new. This shouldn't be news to anybody out there. This is the mindset of millions and millions of people. They don't respect the truth. They don't listen to what's right in front of them. They can't see the numbers, and they're just blinded. Now, this is what really bothers me, is that this person and his buying decisions, or hers, affects me and jacks my prices up. This is costing me personally money, and that is really what bothers me, is that other people's poor decision making is costing me money. I'm going to be selfish here. I care more about my money than anybody else's money. Just going to be serious. Even my wife's. My money's more important. Now, you can go through the comment section of my own videos, and you're going to see comments like this all over the place. I try to educate. I try to tell people to go figure out their own information. But, you know, just the amount of nonsense, made up, techie BS that's out there, it's staggering. So I'm just going to leave it there. That's my take on the whole situation. That's why it upsets me and bothers me, and we need competition in the market. This is the reason why I said we have to support AMD. We have to get their market share up, bring Nvidia's market share down. This way they're both competitive, and hopefully prices will just normally balance themselves out. Like I said, it looks like Nvidia is raising the roof to where even AMD is going up a bit. So who knows where it's going to end. Hopefully we can get a balance and they can beat the crap out of each other and prices will kind of stabilize. Now, I did say on the GTX 1080 Ti, that is probably the appropriate price for that kind of product. I was okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. Now, Nvidia should launch that product at launch so people can get the full value out of it before a new architecture comes out. But that's a whole nother gripe. But as I said, this is going to be the last video I do like this on this particular subject, unless some groundbreaking news comes out. We're just going to leave it alone. And it's up to you guys. I'm just going to keep talking about what's better. For example, for 1080p gaming, I actually would not recommend either the GTX 1060 nor the RX 580. I wouldn't recommend either of them. For 1080p gaming, you are best served by an RX 570. Digital Foundry did a great video on this showing exactly how powerful that GPU is for the money. There's idiots in comment sections all over the place thinking that it's in the GTX 1050 Ti level. It's not. It's just slightly slower than the RX 580, and it's pretty much on par with the RX 480. And if we go back to the TechSpot article right here, Steve basically concludes that the RX 480 is basically on the same level as the GTX 1060 is now through driver updates and the newer games added to the suite. So moving forward, you're looking at basically a $160, $170 GPU that's as powerful as Nvidia's $250 GPU. That's clearly the best buy for 1080p gamers out there. If you're looking for 1440p, you're probably best served by a GTX 1080. And obviously, if you're looking for 4K, you're best served by the GTX 1080 Ti. Well, alrighty guys, if you like honest truth, just the information as I give it to you, this particular channel, the way that I run it, it's basically, here's information, here's my opinion on it. If you like that kind of stuff, please hit that like button. If you think we should all be more sensible with our money and understand that our buying decisions have consequences for people that aren't even just us, please hit that like button. Please share with friends, please subscribe, and please leave some comments in the section below, and I will catch you guys in the next video.